Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and the latest part of this experiment where we're taking a look at what would happen if every Premier League team was made bankrupt. So far we've gone about 3 years into the future. It is 2020 and it's been disappointing because the game has more than ever been correcting the slightest downturn for the biggest clubs by giving them enormous amounts of cash. I mean, City even had over £1 billion at the end of the last episode, which is more than the game's supposed to let them have. So I've got no idea what's going on there, but the game is correcting more than I've ever seen it correct an experiment like this. But on the flip side of that, some of the other Premier League teams have started to get relegated, and you can see them going down the league table here. So I'm going to go forward another 2 years. At the start of each season, I'm going to take another big chunk of cash, about 250 million, out of each club and see how they get on. And if at the end of this episode we still have not seen much progression, then next time out I'm going to start to mess with the club's reputation, because I think that's what's given them the huge amount of money and the ability to change their size of their bank balance. Because if you think about the teams that are going down there, they're teams with low reputation. So I think that's probably the most interesting way to do this. But first off, let's go forward 1 year in time. At the moment, most of the big clubs all still have pretty much perfect finances. You can see Chelsea still listed as rich. So we'll take 250 million out of each, or give them minus 250 million, and then go forward 1 more year. Well, we are 1 more year in the future, and as you can see, many more Premier League teams have gone into administration. All of the established clubs really starting to suffer there. And down at the bottom, you can see West Brom, Burnley and Newcastle all relegated, all of which were given points deductions, which may have kept them up. Fulham certainly were saved by the points deductions. But at the top of the table, Manchester City have won the league. It's the same 5 teams dominating at the top. Liverpool have dropped down a bit, but generally they're all going to be doing absolutely fine. You can see Arsenal have got a lower reputation. I did in the end lower their reputation down because I was a little bit annoyed at the lack of progress, and that's the same for all of them. So Bournemouth have lower reputation, so did Brighton. Bristol City were where they were anyway. Chelsea have had their money absolutely smashed. Everton well down. Fulham are all right. Hull the same as well, and Ipswich. Liverpool well down, which is why they slipped down the table too. Manchester City with a national reputation, the same for Manchester United, and Middlesbrough with a regional one. You can see all of them having their reputation damaged, but generally their finances not too changed. I think you can see here Spurs, despite the lower reputation, have had their bank balance fixed to the point of £906 million. So even the lower reputation hasn't stopped the game, just giving them an enormous amount of money. And given they've got this lower reputation, it's money they can't even really spend because they can't attract the best kind of players. And if we have a look at Manchester United, you can see in their club details, their finances actually are one of the few which is still in debt, 175 million, which isn't far off what I gave them in the beginning, which is why their finances are listed as okay. But if we have a look at Manchester City, then you can see that their money is sitting up there at 442 million as they won the title. So really frustrating the way that these clubs are still, even now, getting so much money pumped into them. And it'll be interesting to see how much Spurs actually have spent in the transfer window. If we look at their transfer history for last season, you can see that they were not signing that many players. Chelsea were the big spenders, really. Arsenal splashing out the cash too, but the biggest transfers were all out of the club. Manchester United losing Eric Dyer and Eric Bailly, the 2 Erics both gone. But still large amounts of money being spent by the big clubs despite the lower reputation. They're still able to bring in some very, very big names like Robert Lewandowski coming into Arsenal. So that's quite surprising, really, that they're still able to do that. I'm not sure what is going on in this experiment. But if we drop down a division to the Championship and have a look at their league table from last season, you can see Bournemouth did win the league with Brighton going up and Reading. Crystal Palace still down here. Who else is down here? Stoke, Swansea all still down here. And no other teams there. But if we go and look at League One, then I think there should be a Premier League team down here, is there? There is. There's Leicester, who did manage to go up through the playoffs. Southampton now stuck in League One and not able to get their way out. They've got a national reputation, and I don't think I even messed around with this one. It's just dropped that much. And when you look at their finances, it's not too bad, and they are listed as rich, but you can see this big roller coaster just bottoming at the bottom. Finished 23rd and then 6th last year. No other Premier League teams any lower than that, and there's not any down in League Two either. Leicester did manage to get promoted. You can see there 2 consecutive relegations before finishing in 3rd place to go back up. And if we have a look at their landmarks as well, you can see their youth category being lowered. But they haven't been in administration for a while, not since they had new ownership come in. So I'm not sure why they are struggling quite as much as they are. They've actually got a grass synthetic surface. Don't know if that's a new thing as a result of getting relegated, but in their finances, they've still got 79 million to spend, so they will not be down there for very long whatsoever. But not too much else to really look at this point. We're going to go forward another year with the low reputation and another big hit to their finances, and hopefully another team, maybe even from the Championship, can break into this top 5 and just destroy the established dominance at the top of the table. Well, all of the Premier League teams have had their finances lowered, but their reputation has also been lowered to 2,000 or there and thereabouts. And you can see Manchester United win the league almost going unbeaten in their season as well, but still the top 5 hold their position. Interesting that Ipswich, Fulham, Wolves and Bristol are the next 4 teams though, and that gap is narrowing, just 5 points off the Champions League Ipswich as they get more and more money into the team. Quite a few big teams getting points deductions. Man City got one, which actually cost them 2nd place in the league. And down at the bottom end, you can see West Ham finishing on just 10 points after their points deduction. Watford are down there as well after theirs, and Brighton also got one. So 3 more original Premier League teams getting relegated, which is good for the teams coming up from the Championship. Other teams are struggling down there, but if we look at the finances of Manchester United, remember they had minus 175 million last season. In their club details now, their reputation recovered to 5,000, and they do have plenty of cash once more, 87 million in the bank for them. But if we look at a team like who's next up, Spurs, they are actually listed as in debt. They've got the lower reputation. You can see £91 million in debt. They haven't had the automatic fix this time because of that lower reputation. West Ham basically don't have any reputation after everything that's happened to them. And in their finances, because they've come out of administration, they are now up at 67 million. And I'm sure they will continue to get money from parachute payments as well. But it'll be interesting to see where they do drop down. The transfers for this season just gone, the big one all going out actually, all of the big ones. Burnley, the biggest domestic spender, so finally the reputation having an impact. Fulham, the biggest spender from the new teams, and they signed Jamal Lascelles. QPR also with a big spending, Wolves as well. So some of the big teams really losing a lot of value. And if we look at the transfer history for a club like City, you can see 140 million gone out, nobody come in. And then the season before that, they did spend a lot of money, which was the constant sort of thing that was happening. And Manchester United, they had 62 million go out, and a huge amount go out the year before that as well. But their spending carried on before we started to mess with the reputation because it didn't have that big an impact. But you can see most of the other newly promoted teams are spending normally. Spurs actually hanging on to a lot of their players, 50 million going out the year before that. And Watford also selling quite a few players on. So a bit of a change really across the league, not too much difference going on though. If we have a look at the Championship and the teams that have been coming up from this point, then you can see last season the winners of the Championship were actually Brentford. So Brentford, Leeds and Birmingham all going up. No Premier League team getting promoted last time out. So Crystal Palace in third, Stoke, Newcastle down there, Swansea down there, Burnley down there as well, Leicester hovering in and around there, none of them getting demoted or relegated, and if we look at the league table for League One, you can see Southampton have managed to get their way out of this league, so there won't be an established Premier League team in the bottom leagues. They'll all be in the first 2 leagues by the time we start the next episode. And if we go back to the Championship and look at the transfers for this season just gone. You can see Burnley, the big spenders, Fulham, QPR. So actually, they were signing players from the Championship. That doesn't look right. Why? Oh, it's given me the entire country, hasn't it, rather than just the Championship, which is a little bit annoying, but still interesting that it's the newly promoted teams spending the money rather than the established Premier League ones. I'm not really sure what else to take a look at the moment. I think the next part of this experiment will be the last one. I am quite kind of interested of if we drop the reputation for every team down to 0, all of the established Premier League ones, and given the big financial hit, as to whether any team can break into the top 4, because they are knocking on the door at the moment in the Premier League without quite managing to get in there. You can see Ipswich and Fulham both in there. So it'll be interesting to see if they are able to break the dominance. But do drop a like on the video if you do want to see that final part. I'm going to drop the reputation down to 1 and give all the teams about a 500 million deficit. And we're just going to go forward 5 years. I'm not going to do it every year. We're just going to go forward 5 years. Then we'll have a look at the overall sort of structure of the English pyramid and who's been winning the Champions League, whether the English teams have been able to compete at a European level. We'll take a look at that sort of stuff. But let me know if there's anything else that you'd like to have a look at in this experiment, and do drop a like on the video like I said. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see that final part and you're looking forward to the next experiment in a few days time. You can also follow me on Twitter using the link in the description. You can support the channel on Patreon, but until next time, see ya.